Breaking today, President Trump putting Vladimir Putin on the clock, demanding a ceasefire, which has always been what's on the table, a 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine, and he wants to see it happen within 10 days from today.
10 days from today.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
Good.
Have you communicated?
We have a scoop. And then, we're going to put on tariffs and stuff, and I don't know if it's going to affect Russia, because he wants to obviously probably keep the war going. But we're going to put on tariffs and the various things that you put on.
Russia says that Trump's game of ultimatums could lead to war. That was from Medvedev, the second in command there. Let's bring in retired four-star General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General, always good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. It's interesting that President Trump says in that comment, 10 days and we're going to do it. We're going to do these sanctions. And he says, I don't know if they care. I don't know if they'll care.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, he's still attempting to kind of have some kind of a diplomatic solution here. And that's,
right.
He didn't shut it completely down, which obviously he could have. And he could have initially. And when he made the major policy turnaround, which I think is starting to give up on the diplomatic effort and willing to confront Russia. And that's what he's doing by providing military equipment to Ukraine. And those of us who have been looking at this for a long time certainly applaud that effort. It's something that's really necessary. And now we have sanctions and potential tariffs, and he's given them still a window here to come to the table. But I think, where the president is, at that time, if Putin doesn't respond, and I suspect he will not, then we're going to see the tariffs and the sanctions. And that'll be a departure from the diplomatic effort and is underlining the fact that he's now willing to confront Putin. And I think Putin has miscalculated a little bit here. I think he really believed that he was going to frustrate the president quite a bit by delaying everything. And after all, we're only looking for the 30-day ceasefire, and he's willing to accept unconditional. And he did frustrate the president quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But the president didn't walk away from supporting Ukraine, which is what Putin was hoping would take place. I didn't think he knew for a fact what would take place, but he was hoping for that outcome. It didn't happen. So we have a major shift here to support Ukraine and their objectives. I think that's very positive on the part of the president. The patience he's shown here in putting up with Putin's bluster, and he's a skilled liar. He's a trained KGB agent who uses lies to change behavior. And I think he's had significant influence over every president he's had to work with in his 25 years because he's so skilled at it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember George Bush saying that he, saw into his soul, and he thought he understood the man that Putin was and that he was somebody that he could talk to. I think we've seen that happen time and again, and clearly President Trump isn't in that spot anymore on this relationship. And you heard him say, every time I have a good conversation, his wife, the first lady, says, I just heard that they're firing more missiles in, and she understands this part of the world quite well. Given where she was born. Are you satisfied in terms of the movement of European weaponry and machinery that has been promised, the Patriot missile systems? Are they following through with the commitment that they made for 5% NATO defense involvement?
Yeah, well, I think that's a bit of an IOU, in terms of the 5% defense, in terms of their commitment to purchase weapons from the United States and provide them with Ukraine. There's no doubt in my mind about that happening. And at the Rome meeting, which took place a week to 10 days ago, our U.S. representatives were at that meeting, were pleasantly surprised by the Europeans' commitment to Ukraine. And they said it's not a matter of money. We have the money. We are all in here. We're going to provide this support for them. So their commitment is real. They have always seen the threat to themselves, to their own national security.
But they were always willing for us to pay for it. But now that's not the game anymore.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about European support. Actually, through the entire time of the war, the support has been about even. They've about provided the whole European nation states beyond NATO provided about the same amount of level of support that the United States has provided. There's a lot of misrepresentation of those facts out there. But where they are now, and there's particularly 8 countries that are absolutely committed to this, and they see an existential threat. And not too surprising, many of them were former countries under the spell and control of the Soviet Union. They lived it for 45 years. They want no more part of it. And they're willing to make certain that the war ends in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And after all, nobody is losing any loss of life there, not the United States, not the European countries. We're just providing them weapons and a fair amount of moral support, I think, as well. Mm-hmm. So the president is changing his policy right before our eyes. And we don't know if Putin is going to come to the negotiating table as a result of that. That's not knowable. But we do know this. The previous policy did not work with him. So let's try something different. That's where the president is.
All right. We'll see where it goes. General, thank you as always. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, great talking to you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.